Who's going to?
Sorry. Welcome to Baseball and Coffee, episode 37 with Tino and Aaron. What's going on, Aaron?
Not too much. Watching some baseball tonight. Excited to talk some pitching with you.
Right on. Me too. A little depressed about the Mariners losing two in a row to Houston, but no, Julio kind of takes the air out of the balloon a bit.
He didn't play again today.
He didn't know. Sore wrist they said from a slide. Actually, I was watching that game, the game before the All-Star break, but he played, obviously hit the home run derby and played in the All-Star game, but there's some soreness, so they're keeping him out for at least these first two games of the Houston series.
I read that he was battling wrist soreness yesterday. I was surprised they let him play if that was the case.
Yeah, me too.
And I didn't realize they had an afternoon game today. So what was the pitching matchup?
Today was Gilbert and Verlander, and it was pretty badass matchup. Gilbert pretty much went pitch for pitch. He gave up 2 runs, and then Verlander gave up a run in the 7th and a home run to Santana, but got out of a jam. It's interesting, man, how he starts the game at 93, and by the 7th, when he was in trouble, he was pumping 99 at the top of the zone. It's pretty cool to watch. I'm not a Verlander fan. I know we roster him in GGFBI, but man, does he shove.
Yeah.
He's nasty.
Spoiler, he's quite high in my ranks.
Me too. All right.
Coffee story?
Yeah. I don't have much. I bought some. The Cheap in Me got the Walla Walla Roastery coffee that they sell at Albertsons instead of at the roastery. I like to try to support direct, but when I can save $5 here and there, I will. So I'll report back. It's their Harvest blend, which is City Roast. Nice blend, pretty balanced. I'll report back. I've had it before, but I'll report back on this bag.
You said it's the hardest blend?
Harvest
blend. Okay, so that means it's like fresh crop.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think budget is the theme of the day, because what I was going to report was I bought 2 bags of organic fair trade Target brand coffee, which I've never had.
Oh, nice.
It was $5 cheaper than anything else on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And while I know that fair trade organic can be fudged and there's not 100% efficacy always with those labels, it gave me at least some assuredness that I was buying an ethically sourced product. And I bought a medium roast Nicaragua, which I had not had, and I bought another one. It's called Tierra del Sol. Laura and I think it means land of the sun. Bag has pictures of pyramids on it. She thinks it's Egypt. Since coffee's not grown in Egypt, I think it's in South America, like where the Aztecs are. So the bag doesn't say where it's from, but it's quite good. I had some this morning. I brewed it. It was kind of a lime, kind of tart finish, but
nice.
not overly bitter or anything like that. It was a nice kind of like jasmine honey sweetness. I liked it quite a bit.
Nice.
It was good, especially for $7 for 3/4 pound.
Hey, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
Well, you could beat that, but then your pocket card is going away. So
that's right. I'm buying pre-ground. I'm trying to get her to do more pour overs and less K-cups in the morning when I'm here. I figure if it's pre-ground, it's less likely she'll take the easy way out.
Nice. Pretty funny.
No.
All right, man. So pitchers. We're looking at today our top 48, top 50 pitchers rest of season, starting pitching, and then our top 16 closers rest of season. So let's start with the first 10 or so. Who's your number one?
We're going starter or reliever?
We'll go starter first.
Okay. And I thought about this through the lens of our league like we normally do. So I looked at wins, saves, and holds, not just saves. Sure. Although my pitchers on the reliever side are closers, but just for transparency on that. So how many do you want to do to start for starters?
Let's do our top 5.
Okay. So for me, it was Verlander 1, Cole 2, Clenahan 3, Scherzer 4, Gausman 5.
Wow. I like it. I'm stunned. So mine are Burns 1, Alcantara 2, McClanahan 3, Scherzer 4, Otani 5.
Okay.
We've got some big differences here.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Verlander 1. I guess that's the first question.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like all of the looked at stuff plus, pitching plus. I looked at strikeouts minus walks. He has a sub 1 whip tonight to this point, and I think Houston could legitimately win 100 games. As you said, he gets stronger as he goes on. We were talking. I can't remember if that was recorded or not, but I just I was torn between him and Cole. Honestly, I just didn't want to put Cole first. Verlander would have been second if I had ceded to my bias, but yeah, I just think really, really, really good team, really, really good pitcher. Commands the zone, gets stronger as the season goes, and I think with wins, strikeouts, ratios, he helps you across the board. Doesn't have the innings questions of like a McClanahan. Doesn't have the injury concerns of a Scherzer or DeGrom. Doesn't have the ballpark concerns of a Gosman or a Wheeler. So he's just kind of a good mix of team, park, skill, experience.
So do you don't have any injury concerns with Verlander?
I don't. I mean, he's so far removed from surgery, and he's looked so strong. He was almost 2 years removed by the time the season started. So
right. So
yeah,
Verlander, go ahead. Sorry.
I think he's in the honeymoon phase.
Okay.
MJ Melendez is single to lead off the game against Patino, by the way, your
awesome.
guy.
I appreciate that.
I didn't realize they had him leading off. So.
Yeah. It's pretty wild to see him leading off. To whenever I think of catchers leading off, I think of Jason Kendall.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that he is leading off. Verlander, I had him in a bucket with a number of other pitchers. I want to try to bring this up here because he, to me, looked very similar to a couple of others. Let me find who I was looking at when I made that comparison. So the thing about Verlander to me that, I didn't really find anything that was of major concern. I think that his swinging strike rate, I think, has gone down over the past couple of seasons a bit. That's one sign of the slight decline. I do worry a little about because he's had major injury in the past. I do worry about his innings, but it is Justin Verlander after all. The other thing is his xFIP didn't stand out to me. It's 3.34. And so he might be pitching a bit over his head currently if you put very much stock in Verlander. But there are a lot of pitchers that we could mix and match in this top 5, and I don't think there would be a huge issue with that. Are you worried about McClanahan? So you're worried about a little bit about McClanahan's ability to pitch through the whole season, huh? Because of the innings?
Yeah, I mean, just because he's never done it before. And so, I would assume that they have designs on the postseason. So they may, do some things to limit his workload. I mean, I don't know that, but I think it's enough of a question to push him down to 3 for me. But I mean, he's been exceptional thus far. His projections aren't great, but I mean, it's because he's a younger player and projections favor guys who have more of a track record. But
his K minus BV is 31.1%. It's just wild. And then the other question I have for you is Sandy Alcantara. How come he is not in your top 5?
Because I think the Marlins will fade, and I think it's going to hurt his ability to get wins. I don't trust their bullpen, and he doesn't. He's an accumulator when it comes to strikeouts. So
sure.
I mean, he's going to take the ball every 5th day, and he's going to shove. But I think from a fantasy perspective, the wins, the strikeouts are going to be elusive. Right now, he's dependent on the volume, to get the strikeouts. But he's a ratio machine. Park. I'm worried the Marlins are going to just start to fade. As the season goes on here, and their bullpen is just not good. And that's honestly another reason. I mean, I'm picking nits here with McClanahan, but Tampa's bullpen is also not what it used to be.
Sure.
They don't have a good record in close games, and their bullpen is blowing a lot of leads. So if he's only going 5 or 6, they have to throw 3 or 4 innings. And they just haven't shown that they can consistently do that the way they have in the past. So that may hurt us a little bit on the win side.
Mm-hmm. I think if there were no worries about McClanahan, he would be, I think, just from a skill and statistic standpoint thus far, be the number one moving forward. But I do have questions about his ability to pitch through the season. I'm guessing they dialed him back to 5 innings to start, or 5 to 6 innings to start. And I think he'll continue to be incredibly effective. I actually do have tremendous confidence in their bullpen still. They have Fireisen coming back, which I think is going to be a pretty big deal. And I don't, I trust the Rays to bring up random guys that we don't know who they are to serve in high leverage roles towards the end of the season anyways, just because they kind of manufacture those guys. Burns was my number one. I think he is doing what he did last year. Again, we can kind of put a number of these guys in a hat and pull one out. He's the one who is proven to me, given his Cy Young last year. And again, he's putting up the same results. He's 7-4 in 118 2/3 innings. He struck out 149 batters. The only other pitcher above him with K's is Dylan Cease. But he has a lower walk, obviously a lower walk rate than Cease, and a 25.4% K minus BB. So for me, Burns is 1, Alcantara 2, McClanahan 3. I do have Scherzer 4. In all these rankings, including our player rankings in the previous pod, I tend to go back to the proven commodity, right?
Yeah.
I tend to go back to it's Max Scherzer, right? And so even though he's had an injury, I don't love the Mets defense. I think they're a little old in places. I trust Scherzer to continue to produce. And then Ohtani 5. I think that, Ohtani is last year, his hitting surpassed his pitching. This year, he's obviously, I think, a much better pitcher than he's been a hitter thus far. And his stats are just too incredible, I think, to ignore in that top 5. I know that Cole is also probably deserving to be there, but Ohtani's 9-5 with 134 strikeouts and only 93 1/3 innings, with a 35.9% K rate and a K minus BB, only trailing McClanahan. So I don't expect Ohtani to really fall off. I don't see anything in his profile that says that he's overperforming right now. Or that he'll regress to the mean. In fact, his xFIP is 2.38 and his ERA is 2.80. So Ohtani's my 5. Who do you have 6 through 10?
Nola, DeGrom, Burns, Wheeler, Cease.
Nolan, DeGrom, Burns, who, and then Cease? Wheeler, Cease?
Yeah.
So DeGrom's the interesting one there, obviously. You expect him to be back?
I do.
Next week, is that right?
Yep.
Something like that. He was so hard for me. I actually left him off the 48. If I was forced to put him here, I would probably put him in the back end of the top 10 as well. I just don't know what to expect yet. Do you expect Cease to continue doing what he's doing?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be bumpy at times, but I don't see anything in terms of workload or underlying skills that suggest that he's going to revert. I mean, his FIP is lower than his ERA. You already referenced that stat a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and his stuff plus is such that, he's going to be a premium strikeout asset. And while I think it appears the White Sox are pretty an average team, they do have a good closer, but
I do worry about the walk rate just completely imploding at some point, or just kind of coming back to haunt him a little bit more from an ERA standpoint. But yeah, Cease so far is really, he's got Cease and McClanahan are the two whose stuff I think is far and, well, I guess Alcantara too, far and above anybody else. I've got Cole at 6. He's still getting his strikeouts. His xFIP is still 2.71. His ERA is 3.02. there's nothing really to pick at with Cole, other than, I think sometimes that outfield defense in New York can potentially hurt him. I think they've really done a great deal to improve the infield defense with specifically with IKF at shortstop. He's got great range and a very consistent shortstop. And then moving Torres to second has also helped, taking him off short. But their outfield is not great. And so that's a factor that I take into consideration when thinking about Cole. Nola is 6 or 7, excuse me. I don't think we're talking about Aaron Nola enough as a fantasy community.
Yeah.
137 strikeouts and 126 and 2/3 innings. He's got a 3 ERA. I think he's one of those guys that people just kind of, the beginning of the year, we say he never performs up to his peripherals, and then we leave him at that. But this year, his ERA and xFIP are pretty much matched up. His K-BB is 24.8%. The key thing with him is he's only walking at 3.3% of batters. And so he keeps, while he gives up some base hits, he really does keep the base runners down. So Nola 6 or 7, excuse me. I have Wheeler at 8, Cease at 9, and Robbie Ray at 10. I think Wheeler's just cruising along. We talked about Cease. Robbie Ray at 10 is mostly because he's such a strikeout accumulator.
Mm-hmm.
He's 135 strikeouts and 117 innings. The other thing is he's been lights out in his last 5 starts. And so with the introduction of, a little bit of a 2-seamer, he's given the hitters a lot more to think about. And so even though Robbie Ray's ERA is 3.54 currently, I expect that to come way down in the second half of the season. The one omission was your number 1, Justin Verlander. I have him at 11.
Okay.
But we've talked about that already. I think he belongs in the group with Nola and Wheeler and Ray, and to a certain extent Rodon as well. I kind of bucket those guys at the bottom of my top 10.
Okay. I think I should probably speak to Burns before we move on. I have him at 8.
Sure.
And with having him at 1, it's quite a discrepancy. My reasoning is that, yes, he's a strikeout pitcher, but he tends to be really inefficient as a result. Not inefficiency that he doesn't throw strikes, but he really is a strikeout pitcher. I watched him last night, and he threw 107 pitches to get through 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, and I think that's pretty typical. And you'll hear this a lot. I think team context, I think, is something I look at pretty heavily for these guys. And Milwaukee just doesn't score consistently, and their bullpen outside of Williams has been really hit and miss this year as well. Suter has not been what he is. Hader is going through a rough patch. And so they're not as good as they have been in the past, where they've had that direct link to finish games. So if he's only going 5, it's 4 innings that they have to hold the lead, and they may not even have the lead because they just don't consistently score. They rely on the home run so much that, and that's where they don't hit it over the fence. They struggle to score runs. So that's why I have him at 8. I think the innings might be less than people expect, and while he'll deliver a good strikeout per inning for sure, I think the wins might also underwhelm.
It's interesting because context is very important, right? And we're talking about bullpen, ability to hold leads in order to get your starters wins, offense. From my perspective, I tend to look at pitchers' stats first, and then if they're grouped in with other pitchers, then I start to dig through context a bit more. But with Burns, you're right. So he's thrown the second most pitches in baseball thus far. Alcantara is first at 1,945. Burns is second with 9,000 or 1,927. And Alcantara has thrown almost 19 and 2/3 innings more than Burns has thus far. Now, Alcantara on the flip side is 56% ground ball pitcher. So you're looking at someone who's pitching to contact quite a bit more, but your point's well taken that Burns is not going nearly as deep into games. Although Milwaukee's bullpen, to your point, has not performed at the rate that I think we've come to expect from them. I do think that down the stretch, I expect Milwaukee's bullpen to improve, just because Hader as a over 3 ERA currently, and we don't expect that to continue, obviously. And I do think they'll ride Williams quite a bit more down the stretch. So who do you have in your next grouping, like 11 through 15?
Do you want to go 11 through 20 just to kind of speed
Sure.
things up a little
Yeah,
bit?
absolutely.
So 11 through 20 for me were Rodon, Kershaw, Otani, Ray, Nestor Cortez, Brennan Woodruff, Sandy, Bassett, Morton, and Bieber.
Pause in there a little bit.
So again, that go through that was Rodon, Kershaw, Rodon we talked about a little bit. Otani, Ray, we talked about Otani, or we talked about Ray a little bit. You talked about Shohei, Cortez, and Woodruff. I think Cortez, I mean, he doesn't have the stuff and strike out of a lot of these guys, but he plays on, you know, a 100-win team with a good bullpen, and he's shown sort of like Martin Perez that he can pitch to soft contact and go deep in games. And when your team, you know, scores a lot of runs, that's a good formula for accumulating innings and wins. Woodruff and Alcantara, Bassett and Morton. You know, Bassett's one of my, he doesn't pop anywhere, but plays again for a first place team in a good park. And Morton, and then Bieber, who's honestly been a little bit better than I thought he was going to be. And Cleveland seems to be on the rise, and their bullpen always seems to do a good job.
So one quick thing, Cortez, you know, I rostered Martin Perez for a while and ended up trading him. The big difference between the two of them is that Cortez is strikes out a lot more batters. So his K rate currently looks like 26.1%, and his K minus BB is 20.3%, whereas Perez is at 14.2. And then the thing that gives me a little pause with Cortez is the workload. Again, I don't know that he's gonna continue to pitch. You know, they might cut him down to five innings to start because he doesn't have the workload history. He also has his strand rate currently is 86.5%, and if that regresses to the mean a bit more, you might see a little bit of inflation in his ERA. His xFIP is over a run over his actual ERA, but he is a fun pitcher to watch.
I appreciate you detailing that. That was a loose comp on my point, and clearly not an accurate one.
No worries. I think that it is accurate in that the two pitchers that are continuing to perform that we don't expect to actually coming into the season, we didn't expect to perform. I guess Cortez maybe based on last year's results, but no, I think they're both surprises. And I do think that there's a comp there in terms of their results and the surprise in the results. So for me, if I'm going kind of 13 through 20 or 13 through 24, this next tier is Alek Manoah, Max Fried, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Clayton Kershaw, Frankie Montas, Framber Valdez, Shane Bieber, Julio Urias, and that's kind of a bucket for me, the next tier. I didn't find a lot of differentiation between those guys other than, or in their final results, they get to them in different ways, right? Manoah has, I think he has 11 wins or at least 10 wins, 10 and 4. You know, but he throws a lot of two-seamers and he's playing in Toronto, which scares me a bit. Max Fried is super interesting because he gives up a lot of hits, but he also gets a ton of ground balls and doesn't strike out as many batters. And I think that's by design, but he's playing on a championship team. So his wins, I think, are going to continue to be there. Musgrove and Musgrove, Darvish, who were the others? I had a couple others that were in that same bucket where their stats looked almost identical. Darvish and Musgrove specifically are really, really similar pitchers. Kershaw, I'd love to rank higher. Obviously, the LA context and with the bullpen and the wins, but he's another arm that could give out at any point in time. And I think that's a big worry. Frankie Montas, I would have ranked a bit higher than, I think I have him at 18, except for that we don't know if he's going to get traded from Oakland. And if he stays in Oakland, his wins are going to be really depressed. And then Framber Valdez is just a fun pitcher to talk about. Did you dig into him at all in these rankings?
No, not specifically. No.
His ground ball rate is 67.2%. So everything is on the ground. And his BABIP was only 260. So usually with the ground ball rate that high, you would expect them to give up many, many more hits. But I was just fascinated by that ground ball rate. I don't think I can remember seeing a starter's ground ball rate that high ever.
Yeah.
Maybe Brandon Webb. I might want to go back and look, but that's the only guy that comes to mind for me. And then Bieber, I think, is just quietly still great, right? There was a lot of conversation about his fastball averaging right around 90. I saw it up to 92, touching 93 in his last start, but he's such a tactician and such a fun pitcher to watch. And then I have Urias at the bottom of that tier, and he's a good pitcher, not a great pitcher, but I have him there because he's a Dodger, and he could get 10 wins in the second half. Who's your next tier?
So my next grouping, a couple of guys you've talked about, Darvish and Musgrove,
Mm-hmm.
Strider and Manoa, Castillo and Javier.
Mm-hmm.
Two guys that get a lot of swing and miss, Gallen and Montas, Skubal and Webb, Urias and Gilbert, and then rounding out the top 30, Pablo Lopez.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Castillo, will you move Castillo if he gets traded away from Cincinnati? Or how much would you move him if he does?
I mean, maybe as aggressive as maybe 8 to 10 spots. I mean, he's got the skills for sure, but he does struggle with consistency, and obviously it's a bad home park. But I mean, his skill is just off the charts.
Mm-hmm. And then the other one, so I have Gosman all the way down at 29, and I think you had him in the top 10, correct?
Yeah.
So the one stat that stands out for me so he's number 3 in pitching Fangraphs WAR, for context. He's 7-7 with a 3 ERA and a 2.74 xFIP. You know, he's got the 30% CSW, all the things that we look for, but he's given up 110 hits in 99 innings. And his BABIP is 378, which is completely nuts. Yeah. But is this just a belief in the skills and that the hits that he's given up are kind of bad luck? Because for me, you know, a pitcher with a 1.29 whip, I see the strikeouts and I know the skills, but his whip is incredibly high. And I think the wins will be there because of Toronto, but I'm just wondering, like, that's a pretty big difference in ranking for the two of us.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm surprised that he has 7 losses. Honestly, I didn't realize that he lost that many games. Yeah, I mean, his pitching plus is near tops of the position, which is a combined of stuff plus command. He's forecast for 6 wins, 93 strikeouts the rest of the way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just with that kind of strikeout on that team, with that kind of underlying skill, I didn't realize he had 7 losses, but I would expect that BABIP to regress in a positive way.
For sure.
And maybe there is room for me to move him down, but I would be hesitant to move him outside the top 10 or 12.
Mm-hmm. So certainly not at 29 is what you're saying. All right. So the only pitcher you didn't name in my next grouping is Luis Garcia. I don't think you said Luis Garcia.
I have him at 32, so he would be coming up right near my next group. Yeah.
So my group was Luis Castillo, Logan Webb, my beloved Logan Webb.
Yeah.
Luis Garcia, Chris Bassett, Tarek Skubal, Brandon Woodruff, Logan Gilbert, Kevin Gosman, and that kind of ends that tier for me. I really want to believe in Gilbert. I really, really, really want to believe in Gilbert. He's a Mariner. I roster him in the league that we care about the most. But man, have you taken much of a look at Logan Gilbert?
What I see is his stuff plus is 96, which is basically at league average. His pitching plus is 102.8, so that's slightly above league average. 8.76 K per 9. Yeah, I mean, he seems like a solid middle of the rotation guy, an accumulator. Right. We know about the extension and his fastball command that he has. But yeah, maybe he needs another pitch to go to the next level with swing and miss, or but yeah, I mean he's solid but not spectacular to me, and the stuff plus and pitching plus kind of demonstrate that. I mean, he was
Right.
probably over his skis what he was doing earlier this year, and he's kind of regressed back a little bit off of that.
Mhm.
But I don't think what he's doing now is too far from this, like where he's at with his talent right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. His, as you said, he's got elite extension on the fastball, and it sits 95, 96. I think the slider is the big one. He increased his velocity on the slider at the beginning of this year compared to last year, and that's given him some pretty decent results. But yeah, he needs that third pitch, right? He needs because he's so fastball heavy. He's got an elite fastball as far as results and the extension. But he's become he's also consistently giving 6 and 7 innings to the Mariners, which is great. But I now kind of expect him to give up 2 or 3 runs every start. And that's not necessarily what I'm looking for from a top of the rotation starter. I think to your point, he settles in as like a number 3 in real life and number 3 in fantasy, and it becomes more of an accumulator than anything else. And you've got to surround him with guys with better ratios. It's too bad because I was hoping for a little bit more from him. I didn't feel like he had the tools to do it, but I was hoping that he would discover another pitch. He still has time to work on it though.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next group, I'm going from about 30 down. For
Okay.
me is Christian Javier, Spencer Strider, Tristan McKenzie, Nestor Cortez, Miles Michaelis, Tony Gonsolin, and Pablo Lopez. How about for you?
So my next group, Clevenger, Luis Garcia, Evaldi, Hunter Green, Drew Asmus, and George Kirby, Max Fried, Freddie Peralta, John Gray, Tristan McKenzie.
There was a picture that I was Hunter Green. So obviously we know that his stats up to this point have been pretty terrible. What is it that you see that's going to help him kind of grow into a fantasy worthy starter for the second half?
Well, I mean, I think strikeouts are a category in that matters, and he's going to be inconsistent. I mean, his stuff plus is 132, and his pitching plus is 106, and he has 10.1 strikeouts per 9, and that's just with 2 pitches
Right.
as a rookie. So he's forecast for a 1.3 WHIP the rest of the way. But I definitely think he's going to have a couple of games, especially in our head-to-head format the rest of the way, where he's going to be a real difference maker for you.
Mm-hmm.
When we're down here in an area where you have other guys who are coming back from injury or have other concerns. And to me, if I have someone who has a 10.5 K per 9 and a 132 stuff plus, I'm not necessarily going to use him in every matchup, but he has a ceiling that I think not a lot of people can match.
Right. When we've seen some of those incredibly dominant starts already.
And I mean, those make a big difference in head-to-head.
Yes, absolutely. Did you watch McKenzie today by chance? Against the White Sox?
I watched the condensed games this morning, and then I'm scheduled to watch these games at 7. I did not watch any afternoon games.
Got it. He's so interesting to me because his stuff is not that impressive, right? His fastball is 92 and he elevates it really well, and he's got that big curveball, but he continues to get results. I continue to want to push him down. When he was a prospect, I wanted to push him up, and I continue now to want to push him down because I'm not overly impressed with his stuff, but the results are there. I named Gonsolin in this group. I am a little worried about both role and innings for him. He's had a lot of injuries over his career, and I could see a scenario where the Dodgers decide that one of Gonsolin or Tyler Anderson goes to the pen, and in that case, Gonsolin obviously would fall off this list. Pablo Lopez is a trade candidate. I think for Miami, I think they would be really smart in trading him if they're out of contention. And so that might change his context a little bit. And then I think you named John Gray as well. Is that right? You there? Did you freeze? It's like you froze. John Gray has been really interesting to me. So I apologize, a little bit of internet issues here. I left off with Gonsolin. Just that Tony Gonsolin may lose his job, right? Even though he's an all-star, I think the Dodgers, if they're to deal for a veteran starter down the stretch, or they decide to go, move somebody like Bobby Miller up, you could see Gonsolin or Tyler Anderson get dropped into that bullpen role, even though he was an all-star. So I'm a little hesitant. He was too good to leave off of this list, but not role is not secure enough to have him any higher than where I do, which I think is 35. John Gray, I think, is interesting. We've seen him really kind of take off in Texas this year. Any thoughts on Gray? I know you included him on your list a little bit higher than I did.
Yeah, I have him at 39. 9.5 Ks per nine, through a 1.21 whip, and projected to like a 3.58 xFlip the second half. Good K rate. And just his pitching plus is 99.3, stuff plus 100.3. So right around average, but to me, he was someone that he was so mercurial when he was with Colorado. Seems to be a little bit more stable, a little bit more reliable right now. Just that consistent schedule, not going from elevation to elevation all the time. So not super exciting, but I definitely think, again, someone who you can rely on at this point pretty solidly most matchups.
I also think having Semien and Seager behind him, and then at one point Eli White. I don't really, who do they have in center right now? I know Adolis Garcia plays center some. He's not a great center fielder, but the point is that he has a much better defense behind him now than he had in Colorado, and he's in a pitcher's park now versus the hitter's park, obviously, that he was in Colorado, to your point. So John Gray, I think he's on these.
Tavares is up. I don't know if he's playing center every day, but
I think John Gray is going to continue to climb. I don't expect to see him make it into like the top, let's say 30, but I do think that he'll settle in to be a top 30, top 35 pitcher for the next couple of years. I have Charlie Morton all the way down at looks like 40. And I think that's one where we differed quite a bit. What are your thoughts on Morton? Where do you have him so high?
Yeah, so I had him at 19. Almost 10 Ks per nine. Pitching, as you said, when you outlined Fried, I mean, Atlanta's a very good team. I've actually watched him every pitch he threw last night because it was versus Ohtani. He still has the velocity, still has the curveball. Still was able to get a ground ball when he needs one. He did that several times when he was in trouble. He was able to get a ground ball seemingly at will. I saw him pitch last night, and that was fresh on my mind. And again, with Atlanta and their bullpen, I felt good having him right there on the cusp of that 20 range. Someone that I'd feel really good about with he's got a great track record, but doesn't have the quite upper skills of like a Scherzer or a Verlander, but similar type track record where you can kind of lean on that and trust in that.
The two stats that gave me pause with Morton and why I have him down in that range of more like 40 is the 9% walk rate is a touch high for me. At least right now, I know that's not been Morton historically, but that is a touch high. For context, Cease is at 11%, but Cease is giving you a ton more strikeouts. And then the other one is that his swinging strike rate is 11.5%, and which is pretty close to average, I think. And so on my end, when I see that from a pitcher who's been a bit more dominant in the past, I wonder if he's going to regain it or if he's regressing a little bit because of age. So not that Morton is a bad pitcher, and he's certainly one worth rostering, and he certainly accumulates strikeouts, which is great. But I do see a couple of holes in him that I didn't necessarily see in the previous couple of years. So that was my reason for dropping him a little bit over the past couple of years. Do you have Jordan Montgomery on your list?
Oh, I did. I remember looking at his name, but I don't see him now.
I was pretty surprised in doing this exercise. I was pretty surprised with uh, in what I found with Montgomery. He's running almost a 48% ground ball rate. His 88 strikeouts in 108 innings. So he's not a premier strikeout pitcher, obviously, but he does have a 13.8% swinging strike rate, which surprised me. It's pretty high. So he's missing bats, and his CSW is 29.9%. Yankee pitchers outside of Cole do make me a little bit nervous, as I said with Cortez, just because of the corner outfield defense and the possibility of giving up home runs to right field. But Montgomery thus far has been a pretty decent starter, and I think a fantasy, in our 16 team context, probably a fantasy SP4, SP5.
Yeah. I had him in originally, and then when I added in some of the guys that have more like swing and miss, a little less stability. I mean, his stuff plus is 99, so I kind of moved him down. But yeah, he's been good this year and is a solid starter and good, great team context.
So the only, I guess, out of the top 48, the only other guys that I have on my list that we haven't talked about are Kyle Wright, Tyler Anderson, Nathan Eovaldi, and then I have a group, and Martin Perez, George Kirby, and then I have a group of Alex Wood, Steven Matz, and Lucas Giolito, all pitchers who have performed pretty poorly up to this point, but have underlying metrics that say that they're been quite unlucky and might actually be decent starters down the stretch. Anyone of interest in that list or that you have to add?
Not really. My last few were Gonsolin, Sandoval, Ashby, Snell, Molly, Giolito, Carrasco, and Lauer.
Do you feel comfortable with pitchers of that caliber? Just this is more of a strategy question. Pitchers of that caliber down the stretch, or do you have a cutoff as to where kind of you don't want pitchers past this point down the stretch and in the playoffs?
I think it's a fine line between like volume and quality,
Sure.
Depends a little bit on the matchup and what you need. We have teams that relay volume. And so if you're going to match up, you have to have volume as well. Yeah, if you can pick and choose and just, pitch your best starters, if you're in a fortunate position where your upper tier aces have 2 starts, you can set guys. But in my experience, there are times where if guys on your roster, you have to have them pitch.
Right.
You don't always have that choice
Right.
to meet the starts requirements and things like that. But
so to review, why don't you read your top 10, 1 through 10 again?
sure. Verlander, Cole, Clanahan, Scherzer, Gosman, Nola, DeGrom, Burns, Wheeler, Cease. And like I said, I could be talked down on Gosman with the things that you shared about his whip. Yeah, I might move him down and move, Rodon maybe up.
So my top 10 were Corbin Burns 1, Alcantara 2, McClanahan 3, Scherzer 4, Ohtani 5, Cole 6, Nola 7, Wheeler 8, Cease 9, and Ray 10. All right, let's move to closers. This was also very interesting. I didn't dive quite as deep with closers, but I did not realize just how many strikeouts Edwin Diaz had.
His K per nine is 14.7. It's pretty sick.
He's the Mariners version of Edwin Diaz this year. Yeah, 75 strikeouts and 37 in the third innings, 51.7% strikeout rate. Needless to say, he's my number 1. You have him at 1 as well?
I do.
Mm-hmm. And who do you have at 2?
Hendricks.
I have him all the way down at 6. I have Hader at 2. Hater's Hater. I think that, you can obviously make a case for Hendricks as well. But the 27 saves, I know we're talking about rest of season, but Hader has 27 already, and that to me stands out. Also the 41.9% K rate as well. Who do you have 3, 4, 5?
Seawald, Presley, and Jansen.
Seawald, Presley, Jansen. Okay,
Yeah.
I have Rogers, Clase, Jansen. I expect San Diego to continue to win. Rogers has also gotten pretty unlucky. He's got a 61.9% strand rate, and league average tends to be between like 73 and 75%. So he's been quite unlucky in letting runners score. The thing I don't like about him is he has a lower swinging strike rate for as far as closers go. I know he gives up quite a bit of contact. And then Presley. So you had Presley at 4, is that right?
Yeah.
What is it you see with Presley that has him over closers like Jansen and Clase?
Yeah, I think, he had some bumps early on, but he seems to be getting stronger.
Mhm.
And I think Houston has a legitimate chance to win 100 games. And his stuff plus is 127, his pitching plus is 107. So his K per 9 is 10.7. So it's not elite strikeouts, but I expect him to be a very safe, without kind of the risk of some of the ratio potential damage with like a Rogers or Iglesias.
Sure.
Those guys purely have the job, but they have more blow up outings.
Right, I do, and I think that was confirmed when he came back off of the IL, because there were rumors of Neris and there were rumors of Montero closing, but he definitely just took that job right back and held on to it. He also has a strand rate of 69%, and so he's gotten a bit unlucky this year thus far. So he could be even better than he's been. So I said Rogers at 3, Clase at 4. Clase for me is, a lot of these pitchers, their stats are similar to the next one, right? But Clase is one where the visual, kind of watching him pitch, he looks absolutely unhittable. That cutter, 100-mile-an-hour cutter is disgusting. And that coupled with a 0.76 whip currently and only a 4.1% walk rate was enough for me to rank him at 4. I would rank him probably at 2 if I thought the Guardians were going to be better down the stretch.
I have he and Holmes at 6 and 7 back to back because they have job security and elite skills. Their stuff plus is basically identical, but they just don't have that elite strikeout rate.
Right.
So there could be those closers that really impact strikeouts are just that like extra tool in the bag, and they rely more on the ground ball, which is still gets you to save, and they're still very dominant. But yeah, that's why I had them at 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm. So Seawald, I want to hear about that one because I obviously love Paul Seawald. He's at 15 for me. The stats are awesome. The stats were awesome last year. So I assume that you're working on the assumption that he has the job as the closer.
Well, I mean, I've looked at he's projected for the rest of the way, 1 win, 10 saves, and 2 holds. His strikeout per 9 is 12.3. His stuff plus is 147, which is the highest on this list.
Mm-hmm.
So his stuff is just nasty, which is reflected in his K per 9. So I do expect him to be the, primary closer, but also, his strikeout rate is such where he's going to be an asset there, and his skills are just kind of off the chart. So getting, wins, holds, and predominant, and I expect double-digit saves as well. I just think he's a tremendous asset in our game.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I probably have him too low because I was probably too saves centric or saves focused in my evaluation. But so interestingly, his whip is 0.71. And when I saw his strand rate is 91.8%, that's the kind of strand rate that the immediate reaction is, oh, that's going to regress, right? Because it's too high. But realistically with Seawald, he might be that good. right? It's a 152 BABIP, but he doesn't give up any kind of hard contact. He is pretty unhittable. The cool thing about him is he doesn't really get past 92, 93 miles an hour. And he's got that crazy stuff plus rating, which I think speaks to the rise on the fastball and the sweeper that he throws. I have Hendricks at 6, Holmes at 7. I do have, even though Holmes has been lights out, I do worry just the slightest bit about his job. I think that they'll still be not partial to Chapman, but Chapman is an important personality to that team or to the identity of that team. And it wouldn't surprise me if they moved Holmes back into a leverage role and gave kind of the ceremonial ninth inning to Chapman.
Yeah.
My next few of 8 at 8, I have Presley. We spoke to him. 9, Romano, and 10, Daniel Bard. It pained me to put Bard there because all I can think about is when he couldn't throw a strike. But the stats speak for themselves. Bard has 20 saves and 43 strikeouts in 36 2/3 innings and a whip of just 1.01. He's right up there with any of the other closers as far as production goes. Who are yours down to 10?
So after Holmes in Class A, I have Williams and then Hader, and then Munoz rounding out the top 10.
Munoz he's a fun one. He's an electrifying pitcher to watch. So, and for context, so you're thinking about holds a little bit too, I assume, in that our league values holds.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so I'll just to close out from 11 to, I went down to 17, 11 to 17, Jorge Lopez, David Bednar, Raisel Iglesias, David Robertson, Paul Sewald, Ryan Helsley, and Devin Williams.
So I had 11 through 16, Taylor Rogers. I think he'll get the saves, but unfortunately, I think he's going to give up, some runs. His stuff plus is such that he just doesn't get enough swing and miss. Raisel Iglesias, opportunities are going to be few and far between, and he tends to have some blowups as well, but he has security. And then Kimbrel, who I also don't trust, but will have ample opportunity. And then Bednar at 14, Helsley at 15, and Jorge Lopez at 16.
Cool. Would you feel comfortable with all these guys as your closers, or are you looking to are we at the bottom of that list? Are we looking to improve?
I wouldn't want Rogers, Iglesias, or Kimbrel personally, but that's probably ignorance on my part because they're going to get saves, but I just don't trust them.
What's a touchy thing with saves, right? Because especially in our league, so it's 16-team league, there aren't 32 bona fide closers out there. And so there is some point where if you don't have most teams have 2-ish closers. And I would argue that most teams probably have one closer plus one legitimate closer on this list, plus one closer that hopefully gets saves, like a Tanner Scott, Danny Jimenez, Camilo Doval type of guy, right? Even a Joe Barlow. I have David Robertson as one of mine, right? So even though Robertson has been lights out this season, it's still that second closer that you got lucky with. How important do you think it is that you have 2 dominant closers, or do you think it's important?
In my experience, it's been quite important. The teams that do well have those elite closers days. I think it's just one category, but I think that they're more consistent than holds. If you have someone who consistently gets saves, it just, again, they just seem to be more consistent than holds. Holds are a lot more score and game dependent.
Right.
So I think it's a real advantage for sure. I think as we come up on the trade deadline, not necessarily these guys on this list, although there might be a few that are affected, but we're going to have some shifting. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some guys who are closers to become setup men, or guys that go to become closers somewhere else and take over someone who we think of the closer right now. So it's it'd be interesting 15 days here or so. When is the major league trade deadline this year?
It is. I will look it up real quickly. It's coming soon though.
Our league is until August 14th. I was surprised to see it that late. Usually ours is more coinciding with the MLB, which I know MLB pushed it back because of the late start of the season, but
Says so when I Googled it, it says that the per the 2022-26 collective bargaining agreement, the commissioner's office will have the flexibility to set the trade deadline on a date between the 28th and August 3rd.
okay.
But
So,
I don't know if that's it's 11 days till the this was written 3 hours ago, 11 days to the deadline. So what is that? Like the 4th or the 5th of August, it looks like.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping and praying Bednar doesn't get traded to a contender and become a leverage or a setup guy. That would sink me. A little nervous about that.
It'd be a bad look for the organization, but I think Charrington's going to do what he wants to do.
Right. Robertson might too. Robertson might get traded because he's an older pitcher, an asset. He's not going to be around when the Cubs contend. I could see him going to a contender and taking over the 8th.
For sure.
Anything else with pitching?
No, I'm just watching Patino struggle, which kind of makes me sad. We just recently had our Futures Game episode. I remember watching him just be so electric in the Futures Game. Just starting to wonder if we're ever going to see that version of him on the major league mound or not.
Right.
He can't stay out of the middle of the plate. Everything. I think the ump was squeezing him a little bit, but when you don't throw strikes consistently, you're not going to get calls.
Right.
And then he's throwing the ball. Everything is down the middle, and it's just like batting practice.
Right.
So I think I'm going to have to reevaluate using him. I was hoping he could be, 3-4 inning, 6 strikeout, kind of pitcher, but I don't know if that's in the cards. I'm not just, which is kind of sad, but he just doesn't look confident out there.
Right.
That's what I missed seeing him. When you saw him in the Futures Game, he was just confident. He exuded it. I don't know if it's his injuries or whatnot. He just doesn't seem to have it right now.
Right.
He looks like he's trying to aim the ball, not letting it go.
Right.
Anyway, that's that long rant, but
that's all right. I have a lot of Patino love on this end too.
We get invested in these young guys, and so it can be a bumpy road. For
sure. Do you have an open forum question for the week?
I don't. I had a stack of cards and I tried to make sure to grab more than last time, but I didn't have any open forum.
Sweet. I'll ask a quick question then. Do you have a project, or what's your first thing that you're going to attack in the off season, baseball wise?
Oh man.
I
have several baseball books that I want to read. I bought a copy of Moneyball, which I've never read, which I want to read. And I also want to read is it Fabian Araya that wrote that Dodger book? I have that on my wish list on my used bookstore app where I buy books. But yeah, I'm probably going to read a couple baseball books to be the first thing I do.
Cool. Outside of the typical, kind of fantasy evaluation stuff that we'll do, I think I'm going to try to build a projection system this year, and it'll probably be pretty rudimentary, but on top of the writing and all the stuff, the pod and all the stuff that we're talking about doing, but I have the time and the energy to do it. And I think it could be really, really fun to build your own projection system. I don't know if it'll be a pure projection system the way that, Bad X and some of the others are, or if I want to do something that's more geared towards pitching or hitting, but I'm pretty excited about it for sure.
Well, I look forward to hearing more. That sounds interesting.
Let's open some cards.
Okay. All right. So starting off with a pitcher. Kyle Quantrill. Pitched well yesterday.
I like him. I've always liked him, and I don't love sinker ballers, but for whatever reason, I've always had love for Kyle Quantrill. And Paul.
Yeah, I like the way he wears his uniform. I like the way he wears his hat, and I like his socks.
Right
on. Johnny Bench.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Does not look like an athlete.
No.
This is interesting. It says Tampa, but it looks like a white blank uniform. It's Nelson Cruz.
Huh. Yeah, because they have it on the one side. That's funny.
Yeah, it's like generic. It almost looks generic. Herman Marquez.
He's going to get traded. He should get traded at least. And I think when he does get traded, he's going to be dominant.
Craig Biggio. Not one of my favorite players.
Me neither. Craig or Cavan? Was that Craig or Cavan?
Craig.
Oh, it's like a throwback card.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that his uniform looks blank as well. For Mariner now, Jesse Winker.
Nice.
That card needs an update.
I love him, but he's not clutch right now for the Mariners, unfortunately.
All right. Not a player either of us are big huge fans of, Nolan Arenado.
But he's great.
It makes me jittery just watching him. And
is he a Hall of Famer?
I don't think so, but we'll see where he ends up. I mean, has he ever hit 300? Does he ever hit 35 home runs?
He has hit 300.
Okay.
35 home runs, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. All these cards, it looks like the uniforms are blank. This is odd. This is interesting. Babe Ruth.
Oh, cool.
Interesting. There's no Otani cards, but there's Babe Ruth card.
So mad.
This is a Patrick Wisdom. I'm not even going to show you that. That's a joke. Rafael Devers.
Cool.
He's been on the IL.
Yep. I have the goofiest Devers story. So we had a league where we kept 25 of 30 or 35 of 40, something like that, and then drafted 5. And I mentioned to a buddy of mine, so going into the day before the draft, I mentioned to a buddy of mine, Jared, actually, that I was going to draft this young guy, Rafael Devers, right? And Jared had no idea who he was, but he's a Red Sox fan. And sure enough, second round of our supplemental draft, this MFer took Rafael Devers, and I was so pissed. I was like, I'm never talking about those guys again, ever.
Yeah.
And then Devers turned out to thankfully that league is now defunct, but because of it, that one particular draft pick like soured me on the entire league. I was so pissed.
The ESPN Diamond Dozen.
This was before Diamond Dozen. This was
Okay.
like a supplement to Diamond Dozen.
Okay.
I was so mad though. That pissed me off. Any more cards?
No, that's what I have for
Good.
today.
So Arenado hit 309 in 2017 and 315 in 19. But his averages since 13 are 267, 287, 287, 294, 309, 297, 315, but then 253, 255, and this year 295. He did home run wise though. He went 42, 41, 37, 38, 41. So he has 287 career home runs. And he's a career 288, 346, 534 hitter. So that's 880 OPS career with, he'll finish probably with almost 400 home runs. Interestingly, only 19 steals. I don't know if I don't know what the benchmarks are for Hall of Fame necessarily, but I do want to look up one more thing, how many Gold Gloves he has.
Sounds like a Hall of very good player, not necessarily a Hall of Fame player.
Probably. Unless he has a couple more seasons where he's performing at the level he's performing right now. I could see him maybe squeaking in. If Bill Mazeroski got in, Nolan Arenado can get in. Looks like he won his 8th consecutive Gold Glove in 20. So I'm guessing he probably has 10 now. Anyways, we'll see. I think he has a case, but I don't think he's a shoo-in. We're gonna end this episode on Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, I'm not. Doesn't feel good. Ask me something else.
Right, exactly. Any games you're looking forward to tomorrow, or that you have?
I have not looked at the slate tomorrow. I scheduled to watch this game. Is at 7 tonight? Let's see here. I mean, I have the RotoWire pitching grid up. Just give you a quick look here. Bieber Cease, I might make that the game I want to see. Ray Valdez, lefty, that might be interesting.
Yep.
Sandy in Pittsburgh, I can't watch that. It'll be blacked out. I mean, yeah, I'd really like to watch Keller and Alcantara, but I'm not going to be able to. I'll probably end up watching the Mets and Padres, and I'll probably try to catch the Ray Valdez. Yeah.
You got to get yourself you got to move your IP address, bro.
Yeah, I tried to get that service, but I couldn't get that to work on my MacBook, and that's how I like to watch games.
Got
I
it.
got to work on my phone, but I'm not it worked like a Jiffy on my phone, but I'm just not like trying to watch it on a
Right.
phone. Because once I get on my MacBook, I can hook it up to the TV or whatever.
Right.
And I was trying to hash it out with their support team, and just it never worked out. And then, yeah, we'll see. I did still have the link. It was a good service. I got to work for a while. I just need to hash it out. And,
right. I do like that. I can watch. Or the Cubs Phillies would be fun as the Peacock 9 a.m. game tomorrow. And then Valdez versus Ray. See if Robbie Ray can salvage a game for the Mariners in this series against the Stros. Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah.
Talk next week.
Sounds great.
Cool. Feel better, brother.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right.